The biggest gold importer, expensive watches, gorgeous landscapes, and the most trusted banks in the world, all in this small country right here, Switzerland. The country hasn't been involved in any world wars since the time of Napoleon. However, every man is still obliged to serve in the army. Today, it is neither a member of NATO nor the European Union. Here, you can safely buy weapons without a license. Also, all residents of Switzerland must have a place to receive asylum in the event of the apocalypse. How did Switzerland become a military and economic fortress and make its citizens some of the richest, happiest, and most responsible people on the planet? Well, let's find out. $86,500. This is the average annual salary in Switzerland, about $7,200 per month. These are all kinds of good ratings for successful countries. The global index of innovation, economic prosperity, freedom, happiness, and simply the best countries. As we can observe, Switzerland is always on top. And what's their reason for success? Well, before answering that question, I want to ask you something. What comes to mind when you think of Switzerland? Many of you will say mountains, alpine meadows, happy cows, delicious milk, excellent Swiss cheese and chocolate. I mean, you're not wrong. It's produced there in the highest quality, but globally, this doesn't even reach 1% of the Swiss economy. Well, there's another excellent association, Swiss watches. Local companies sell the world as much as $25 billion a year, or almost 16 million pieces, and this is already 7% of all Swiss sales for export. But still, not that much. So where does its wealth come from? Well, from diversification, status, and gold. The Swiss are the main gold traders in the world. According to data, in 2021, they sold as much as $86 billion worth of precious metal. Attention, the country doesn't acquire gold on its land. It comes to Switzerland from abroad. In the same year, they bought $83 billion worth of gold. What kind of outsourcing business is this, you may ask? A very important one for our history here. Who is the main buyer of Swiss gold? Well, mostly the big guys: India, China, the United States, Germany, the UK. Alright, but where does Switzerland get the gold from? Well, from the same countries, but besides them, there are more efficient ones: Burkina Faso, South Africa, Peru, Ghana, Liberia, and Suriname. They are small but valuable suppliers. Why? Look, gold comes to Switzerland in an unrefined form, that is, like ore, and leaves in immaculate golden ingots. For those of you that don't know, Ghana, Liberia, and Côte d'Ivoire are not very rich. They also have a very high crime rate, so the gold is never clean, and you can't know by who or how it was mined. And now an interesting fact. Switzerland annually refines 70% of all gold ore mined on the planet. What is refining? Well, it comes from the French word raffiner, meaning to purify. So the Swiss literally and figuratively purify the world's gold and distribute it under their mark of quality. In 1996, the Swiss Central Bank openly admitted that during World War II, the country benefited from trade with the German bank. The Swiss didn't buy only German assets, but also what Hitler took from entire countries, like Belgium and Holland, or entire Jewish nations. What does that mean? Well, at the end of 1941, Germany was already at war. It bombed the UK, invaded the USSR, and war was declared by the USA, which meant that Hitler could no longer pay with British pounds or American dollars. Therefore, the only international currency for which he could buy fuel, raw materials, and weapons remained the neutral Swiss franc. How to get it? Well, it's logical. Buy it from Switzerland. And the Germans got the currency in exchange for the assets of the Holocaust victims, as well as the gold reserves of occupied countries. Switzerland, back in 1940, allocated a credit line of 150 million francs to Germany, and in the summer of 1941, it was already 850 million. In total, for the Second World War, Germany received 2.3 billion francs from Switzerland. I have two questions for you. Why should neutral Switzerland trade with the main world aggressor? Well, take a look at the position of the country after Hitler occupied France. The Swiss should either prepare for defense because they're next, or bargain. Switzerland is doing both. Question number 2. Why would Hitler himself do all this trade with diplomacy when he could simply conquer Switzerland like France or neighboring Austria? The plan for the capture was indeed created. Here it is, Tannenbaum. In the same way, the Swiss were preparing to defend themselves with the Redoute operation. What is Switzerland? A mountainous country, yes. Most of its population lives here on the plain, but the rest of the territory is impassable Alps. Using them, the Swiss will create the largest and most impregnable fortress in Europe. They mined all the roads and bridges with their neighbors, drilled bunkers and shelters for evacuation, and placed artillery in the mountains. All the local cliffs were turned into hidden arsenals, hospitals, and food warehouses, where tens of thousands of soldiers were hidden. In total, the country mobilized 430,000 of them. Let me remind you, Switzerland at the time had 4.3 million inhabitants. The purpose of the defensive plan was that if Hitler starts attacking, it would seem so difficult and costly that he would retract. The Swiss were ready to blow up all the roads and bridges, and even if Germans crawled onto the plain and occupied the industrial and financial centers, Zurich, Geneva, Bern, Lausanne, they would get fired from the mountains. Well, apparently they calculated everything in Germany and decided that it is more convenient to have a neutral country nearby than to destroy it. Firstly, Switzerland has one of the most developed industries in Europe. The Germans signed an armistice with them, and Switzerland carried out partial demobilization, sending their men back to the factories to strengthen the Swiss economy while simultaneously supplying the Germans with necessary goods. For example, these anti-aircraft guns are from the Swiss company, Oerlikon. Secondly, the Nazis themselves personally opened accounts in Swiss banks. Many of them still exist to this day, but since Swiss banks are among the most reliable in the world, no one is going to reveal the names of the owners and what they have there. Well, Switzerland has one more advantage, its geological location with excellent roads, both conventional and railway. They allowed free transit of both Italian and German goods in the Second World War. Look at what the country looks like today. There are several official languages and 26 independent cantons and semi-cantons. What are these cantons? It is something like a state in America, each with its own laws and regulations, but the cantons are so independent of each other that, till this day, they didn't choose an official capital for Switzerland. Wait a minute, what about Bern? It's just a federal parliament sitting there. Legally, it's not the capital, since Zurich, Lausanne, Geneva, and further down the list are no worse. Today, Switzerland is the base for many important organizations. The International Red Cross was founded in Geneva in 1863. In the 20th century, in Lausanne, the headquarters for the International Olympic Committee. In Zurich was opened the most important football center, FIFA. In Davos, the World Economic Forum takes place annually, and Geneva, the Palace of Nations was built so that the League of Nations will meet there, the predecessor of the United Nations. Let's get back to the geographical location. There's no sea, there are no resources like coal, oil, and gas, also no fertile lands for people. They chose to stick with democracy and technology. Look at what Switzerland sells to other countries: jewelry, pharmaceuticals, equipment, electricity. Wait, where does that last one come from? Do you know how many dams are in the country? 1,700. From smallest to the largest, like the Grand Dixon's Dam, its height is 285 meters. It is the 7th in the world and the 1st in Europe by size. Now, get acquainted with other grandiose structure. The Gotthard Tunnel. It is 57 kilometers long and the longest railway tunnel in the world. Why am I talking about it? Because in total, there are more than 1,300 kinds of tunnels of any shape, length, and purpose in the country. Local technologies are among the best and proven on the planet. The first railway tunnels were built in Switzerland back in 1840 to 1850. And how do they manage to do this? Again, there is no simple answer. One of the reasons can be their freedom of choice. Because yes, in Switzerland, a direct popular vote is a standard procedure several times a year. For example, in February 2022, there will be 4 referendums. In May, 3 more, and in September, 4 more. 11 referendums a year. Almost every month, a referendum represents direct democracy. What do they vote for? Well, for example, whether to ban experiments on animals and humans, or if it's necessary to limit tobacco advertising. From generation to generation, the Swiss independently choose who to be, how to live, and how to earn money. Let's take the most expensive Swiss company today. You have 100% heard of them, Nestle. It was founded around the time of those first tunnels in 1866. At first, it's just a joint plant with England for the production of condensed milk, but a local pharmacist, Henry Nestle, to earn more, experiments with flour and sugar and ultimately gets the milk flour, the same mixture for feeding babies. In a couple of years, it is sold and saves mothers and children all over Europe. Then, another Swiss from another city appears. First, he works with the Eternal Master, but as soon as kerosene was invented, candles were no longer bought, and the business suffered losses. To survive, the Master switches over to chocolate, and for 8 years, he experiments and tries to combine milk with cocoa powder, and in the end gets the world's first solid milk chocolate. The product quickly conquers Europe, and Nestle buys his business. There is also a third Swiss, Julius Maggi. He came up with the production of instant pea and bean soups, as well as a way to preserve the broth in compressed form, a bouillon cube. They also conquered European kitchens, and the company became part of Nestle. And there are thousands of such examples throughout Switzerland. And here is an important point. Remember, the country is neutral. Yes, it spends money on the army, security, and defense, but the country doesn't reach into its pocket to squander it on war. On the contrary, the Swiss invest money in technology and new successful companies. Also, being in the very center of Europe gets you access to all key transport arteries. After some time, Switzerland is becoming the most important financial and commercial center. And this means rich people need to save their wealth or invest it somewhere. They need banks. Another striking example of a merchant born in 1856 is Credit Suisse, a local industrialist and politician. Alfred Escher is going to build railways, but of course he doesn't have the money for everything. After requesting some loans from France and being rejected, he borrows money from his people. After founding the bank and managing to get to 218 million francs on a subscription-based offer, he started building the railway, and in 1871 it became the largest bank in Switzerland. But remember at the beginning when I spoke about almost the highest average salary in the world? And there is Switzerland. It is huge, but approximately 40% of these $7,200 per month will go to taxes. Zurich and Geneva are some of the most expensive cities in the world for rental housing. Some local employees even rent apartments or houses in neighboring France, and they drive to work across the border to get to Switzerland. Life there is very expensive, but in other words, you have to pay for freedom. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Get down in the comments and let us know which country you should make the next video on.